consistently from 27 billion rand in 2010 to 48 billion rand in 2014. The Dutch have also invested in about 40 projects in South Africa, with direct investment volume estimated at over 15 billion rand over the period 2003 to 2015 in the following sectors: financial services, aerospace, transport, business services, biotechnology, and IT and software. The Prime Minister and I discussed even more possible investment opportunities, such as in South Africa's ocean economy, energy, and other key priorities. I have been informed of the House of the Future project taking place in Newtown, which will enable South African and Dutch companies to partner in various sectors. The message we want to communicate to our Dutch partners is simple and clear. South Africa is open for business and investment. The Netherlands will next year be president of the EU. We would like to reaffirm our commitment to stronger relations between South Africa and the EU. We look forward to the South Africa-EU meeting to be held next year. Mr. Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, we meet during a period when global security is in sharp focus following the senseless attacks in Paris. We returned this morning from the successful G20 summit in Antalya, Turkey, where the attacks drew condemnation from all world leaders who were meeting in Turkey. We remain firm in our condemnation of all forms of terrorism. Prime Minister, the horrific attacks in Paris and also Turkey, Lebanon, and the ongoing terror attacks in parts of Nigeria and sporadic attacks in Kenya remind us that the scourge of terrorism requires urgent attention, with an emphasis on dealing with the root causes. It is our strong belief that the interference by outside parties in some countries and the pursuit of the regime change doctrine has perpetuated a cycle of conflict and instability in many parts of North Africa and the Middle East. The preference for military action instead of political solutions becomes a breeding ground for violent extremism and terrorism. The United Nations must be at the center of collective global action against terrorism, working with regional organizations. The international community must also redouble its efforts, particularly in the quest for genuine peace in the Middle East. It will be difficult to find lasting peace without resolving long-standing issues in the Middle East, such as the Palestinian question. We also wish to reiterate as well that terror attacks should not be used to label refugees as terrorists, as that would have negative consequences. It is a difficult situation, but solutions can be and must be found. The Prime Minister, at the end of the month, the world will converge on Paris for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change 21st Conference of the Parties. We will continue to support France as the COP president with a view to finding fair compromises and consensus positions between parties. We would like to see the adoption of an ambitious and legally binding outcome in Paris that is applicable to all. This would mark the successful conclusion of the mandate from the Durban COP17. The mandate from Durban was to adopt an internationally legally binding instrument under the UNFCCC that can comprehensively address climate change. We look forward to a successful conference in Paris. We are pleased as well that the G20 leaders agreed that COP21 must succeed. Prime Minister, I'm really happy that you have been able to undertake this first official visit to South Africa. I look forward to enhanced relations between our two countries, building on the rich history and our common beliefs in democracy, freedom, human rights, equality, and other values that make the world a better place. I thank you. I'll then invite Prime Minister to make some remarks.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and other ministers and vice ministers and members of the press. Let me start by thanking you, President Zuma, for your very warm welcome this morning. And indeed, this visit has been overshadowed by the dreadful attacks in Paris. And we share the same sense of outrage at this barbaric assault on our values, our democracy, and our freedom. I believe the attacks in Paris highlight the importance of countries working together in the fight against terrorism. And the Netherlands and South Africa are doing precisely, exactly that, together with many other nations. We are partners in the Global Counter-Terrorism Forum, which my country at this moment co-chairs. Terrorism knows no boundaries, so countries must work together to stop these extremists. South Africa is a highly valued partner in the international fight against terrorism. We also discussed other matters, such as our economic cooperation. President Zuma is putting a lot of effort into managing the economy, working on inclusive growth, creating jobs, and realizing South Africa's full potential. The Netherlands and our business community are key partners in helping South Africa achieve these goals. We are committed for the long term, investing and sharing knowledge and expertise to create solid and sustainable solutions. The long-standing relationship between our two countries is strong and mature. The Netherlands stood side by side with the South African people during the long years of struggle against apartheid. Today, our relations are wide-ranging, encompassing politics, business, culture, higher education, and science and technology. Trade and investment are the backbone of our excellent relationship. South Africa is the Netherlands' most important market on the African continent, and we are one of the biggest investors in this country. And indeed, over 70 companies are visiting South Africa together with the political delegation. But President Zuma already indicated we want to go further. We have decided to sign agreements that will deepen our cooperation on a broad range of issues, including agriculture, horticulture, migration, science and technology, and even filmmaking. I am pleased that we are consolidating our already excellent ties. President Zuma, thank you once again for your hospitality, and I hope to return the favor in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency Prime Minister, Excellency Mr. President. I will now facilitate the question and answer session of this press briefing. Please state your name, organization, and the excellency to which the question is directed to. Let me start with the South African media.
The name is Dumaole Mohlaudi from SABC News. The question would be to both President Zuma and Prime Minister Rutte of the Netherlands. You touched at length both your addresses about this issue of condemning the terror attacks in Paris. I just wanted to know in your deliberations, what partnerships would you be looking at? South Africa is involved in many anti-terror, if you would, operations in Africa, helping in various countries. So how can you strengthen these relationships? And secondly, on the issue of the economy, we're looking at South Africa has got has been going through the worst drought that we've seen in decades. I wanted to know, in terms of the economic ties, when it looks for agriculture, what agreements or conversations were you having in terms of trying to mitigate the impact of this drought and for its impact on exports to the Netherlands?
Excellencies.
Well, firstly, with regard to the attacks in Paris, we discussed this. Is a matter that is being discussed globally. I think what the leaders globally are saying, as they did in Turkey, is that we need to unite our forces against terrorism. And this will be done, of course, in different areas by those who operate in certain regions. Those who are closer to the situation are taking very concrete steps to deal with the matter. But there is a general agreement that everybody else, of course, we could best come together in an organized fashion under the UN system. And that's what we were saying. But we are ready, all of us, to participate in fighting terrorism. As I indicated, and I did indicate in our discussions with the Prime Minister, that even in Africa, there's a big challenge. In North Africa, for an example, the extreme kind of terrorist attacks, undermining of the security, and the AU is working on that. But as you know, there have been sporadic attacks, very serious attacks in Kenya. The question is, what then do we do? As Africans, we are doing something. But what we are calling for, we need to coordinate our actions against terrorists globally. This must emerge in one form or the other. Because the terrorists are not going to attack in one place and concentrate there. They will attack anywhere else. It was United States some years ago, very serious attacks. It has been in the Middle East, in Africa, in Europe. So there is no place that is safe. So it's a question of, given particularly the recent attacks, how do we coordinate a number of things. Intelligence, which is critical for countries to know what is coming, what are the plans. When we were in Turkey, they foiled a plan, for an example, to do something in Istanbul. So it is always there. The question of intelligence, getting to know beforehand, sharing information is going to be absolutely important, and saying what then do we do with the extremists. On the matter of the economy, we have just discussed a great deal. How do we want to expand our economic interaction? And of course, as you know, we have a drought. And I hope that the rain that has come is going to mitigate the extent of the drought. I was very happy when I was in Turkey talking to people here who were saying we can't even do our things because the rain is just too much. I thought that this is absolutely wonderful. But it has had an impact, very serious impact. And of course, our very discussions and the agreements we are signing and our commitment to extend and expand our relationship address the issue that you are calling for. What is it that we are going to do? It is these practical, concrete agreements that we have come to. How do we implement them? The pace with which we are going to be implementing them is going to be very crucial. Thank you.
Well, I think important is that we work together in the Global Counterterrorism Forum, so that is one place where the Netherlands and South Africa interact. But I would say that South Africa's leadership is also highly valued in another way. Not only being a member of the G20, and that is important, but also because of the leadership of South Africa on the African continent in terms of bringing stability to parts of Africa where stability is needed. The former president being active, the fact that South Africa is involved in solving a number of conflicts on the African continent is important, because we do not want these conflicts to grow into a situation where potential terror attacks in the future might originate from. So this is the leadership we need, both on the world stage in terms of the G20, but also on the African continent, being the strongest economy, being the most successful country on the African continent. I think South Africa is playing this role. To your other question on water, yes, I brought a lot of companies in the area of water, and they are they bring a lot of experience in terms of how to work with water shortage, sanitation, and all these issues. And the work has started yesterday, is continuing today, will continue tomorrow. The Vice Minister of Water is here. He was also in the delegation meeting we just finished half an hour ago, which was very successful, very action-oriented on logistics, on agriculture, but also on water management. And sometimes we discuss water issues like with Bangladesh on how to prevent countries from flooding, and sometimes we discuss issues like how to deal with a shortage of water, or to deal with the fact that the water quality is not at a level where you want it to be. And here we can help. At the same time, we can learn, because the unique situation of South Africa, also in terms of water management, is something we can learn from and also apply in other parts of the world. So it is really a mutual, two-way partnership.
Thank you, Excellencies. Let me now take a question from a colleague from the Kingdom of Netherlands.
Bram van Meulen, Dutch National Television. Prime Minister Rutte, in the light of the Paris attacks, was there any hesitation this weekend whether you should actually continue with this visit to South Africa? And the second question would be about the statement that you give on Saturday, where you said that the Netherlands is in war with the Islamic State. And I was wondering whether you are not afraid with a statement like that you're actually making the Netherlands a target. And President Zuma, you praised the Netherlands over the role in the anti-apartheid movement. But at the beginning of this year, you had a State of the Nation address where you said that all problems in South Africa started with Jan van Riebeeck. And if I remember correctly, he's from Holland.
No. That's a mistake.
So does this mean, Mr. Zuma, that Mr. Rutte, now that you have the leader of the Netherlands here, should take responsibility for Mr. Van Riebeeck arriving in the country?
Your Excellencies.
Thank you very much. Not at all. We are not saying Netherlands should take responsibility. I think that's a fact of history. There are individuals who play a role in history, and of course, supported by what happens in the process. The fact of the matter that we're looking at was that Jan van Riebeeck arrived here. When Jan van Riebeeck arrived here, that changed the situation of the manner in which we're living as people in this country. He introduced, firstly, he arrived as a friend, needing help, needing cooperation. Once he established himself, he began to fight the indigenous people. And that is what I was referring to. That's when the trouble of this country started. Because there are many things that followed thereafter, including the system that became terrible system, which everybody fought. Netherlands became the center of fighting that system. But as an individual who arrived and introduced a new system and introduced the conflict among the people who were living in this country, that's what I meant. And it's just a fact of history. It is just like if you say the last World War was caused by a man called Hitler. It's a fact of history. The fact that the Germans today are different is a different matter. You can't say, therefore, every other thing that happens must be blamed to Germany. There was an individual who emerged with a particular philosophy and caused the World War. So it was just stating the fact of history, that as we move to correct, to reestablish, to unite, but we must remember where we come from. As a nation, we can't forget that. But the fact of the matter, we are now in a process where we are uniting people in South Africa of all kinds. So we can't say Netherlands take responsibility, not at all. They have been part of our struggle. We share the same values. So it could not have been referring to the man, just like the fact that the man who became the architect of apartheid was born in Netherlands, called Dr. Verwoerd. You can't therefore say, on up to him. By the time he did so, he was a South African citizen. So that is not the issue at all. Just a fact of history to say, remember, we are in this trouble because a man arrived called Jan van Riebeeck, who I'm told where he came from, he was also a little bit naughty. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that settled Jan van Riebeeck. Then on your first question, yes, of course, I have considered it in the light of the terrible Paris attacks, and I decided to shorten my visit to 1 day, because although it's clearly not business as usual, it is important, I believe, that we continue our work, our lives. This is an important visit, not just talking and discussing politics and the economic relations, but also because we are close partners in counter-terrorism, in fighting terrorism, as we just discussed a minute ago. And of course, wherever I am on the globe, with the present technology around the clock, I'm always in constant contact if needed.
Thank you, Your Excellencies, Prime Minister, Excellency President. This brings to a halt our media question and answer session. And I'd like to once again thank Your Excellencies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I have copies of the media statement if you're so interested.